Don't judge your life by the outcome or harvest. Judge your life by the seeds which you plant in life. Do good deeds because that is what matters in life. If you love my stories, kindly support by liking and sharing. Thank you. The city dump was wide and endless. Piles of broken bottles, torn clothes, and old tins filled the ground. The smell was strong, but little Sade had grown used to it. She was only 9 years old, but she already knew how to search through trash. She bent low looking for cans, plastic, or anything her mother could sell. Her hands were small and rough from work, but her eyes were bright with hope. Sade lived with her mother and younger brother in a wooden shack not far from the dump. The roof leaked when it rained, and the walls shook when the wind blew. But to them, it was home. Every morning, her mother would wake them early. They would walk together to the dump, carrying old sacks on their backs. While other children prepared for school, Sad searched for food and scraps. Sometimes she found shoes with broken soles. Sometimes she found toys without arms. Sometimes she found leftover bread that was still good to eat. She always dreamed of a day when she too could have a school bag, neat shoes, and real books. Her mother always told her, "Sade, one day God will change our story. Don't stop hoping." That morning, the sun was hot and the sky looked clear. Sad walked deeper into the dump, away from her mother and brother. She bent over a pile of boxes and lifted one that was half torn. At first, she thought she heard a cat crying. She stopped, held her breath, and listened again. The sound came again, soft, weak, but not a cat. Her heart beat fast as she pushed the box open. Inside was a small baby wrapped in a thin blanket. His face was red, and his little fists waved in the air as he cried. Sad gasped and stepped back. "A baby," she whispered. She looked around. No one was near. Who could leave a baby here? She touched the child gently. He was alive but cold. His lips trembled, and his cry grew weaker. Sade lifted him carefully and pressed him close. "Don't cry," she said. "I will help you." The baby's blanket had a small gold pin on it. She did not know it was the sign of a wealthy family, the Adeyemas, who owned many companies in the city. To Sad, it was just a shiny thing. What mattered was that the baby was alive. She ran back to her mother, holding the child close. "Mama, look, I found a baby in the dump." Her mother's eyes went wide. "What? A baby? Where?" "In a box," Sade said, out of breath. "He was crying. I could not leave him there." Her mother quickly took the baby and checked his body. "He is alive, thank God, but we must take him somewhere safe. A baby cannot stay here." Her brother stared at the child with wonder. "Will he stay with us?" he asked, his eyes wide. Sade shook her head slowly. She wished they could keep him, but she knew they had nothing. They could barely feed themselves. Still, she felt close to him already. It was as if fate had led her to that box. Her mother tied the baby on her back with a piece of cloth. "We will go to the clinic," she said. "They will know what to do." Sade walked beside her, her heart beating fast. As they left the dump, she looked back at the piles of trash. She had always thought the dump only gave them pain and hunger. But that morning, it had given them something precious: life. She had no idea that the baby she carried out of the dump was not just any child. He was the missing heir of one of the richest families in the country, and by saving him, her own life was about to change forever. The clinic stood at the edge of the city, painted white but already fading from dust. It was small, with a narrow waiting room and 2 nurses inside. Sade and her mother walked in, carrying the baby. People sitting on wooden benches turned their heads in surprise. A homeless woman with a baby on her back was not something they saw every day. One of the nurses came forward quickly. "Madam, whose child is this?" she asked, her face full of worry. "My daughter found him in the dump," Sade's mother replied softly. She untied the cloth and placed the baby in the nurse's arms. "We could not leave him there. Please help him." The nurse gasped as she touched the baby's skin. "He is cold but still breathing. You did well to bring him." She carried the baby into a small room. Another nurse followed, closing the door behind them. Sad stood close to her mother, holding her hand tightly. Her heart was still beating fast. She could hear the baby's cry faintly from the other room, and each sound made her chest feel heavy. Minutes passed like hours. Sade's brother sat on the bench, swinging his legs, whispering, Maybe God sent us this baby. Her mother only sighed. Maybe, but the baby does not belong to us. Soon the door opened, and the nurse came out smiling. He is safe for now. He was only weak from the cold and hunger. We gave him milk. He is resting. Sade breathed deeply, her shoulders dropping in relief. Thank you, she whispered. The nurse bent down to look at Sade. You are a brave little girl. If not for you, this baby might not be alive. Sade lowered her eyes shyly. No one had ever called her brave before. Just then, a man in a neat suit walked into the clinic. His shoes were shiny, and he smelled of perfume. He spoke with a deep voice. I heard there is a baby found here? The nurse nodded. Yes, sir. This family brought him in. He was abandoned in the dump. The man's eyes widened. He stepped closer. Describe the child. Small, wrapped in a fine blanket with a golden pin, the nurse said. At once, the man's hands shook. That is him, he cried. That is the Adeyemi baby, the one missing for 2 weeks. Sade's mother looked confused. Adeyemi? Who is that? The man turned quickly. The Adeyemis are one of the richest families in this country. Their only child was kidnapped from their home. The city has been searching everywhere. There is even a big reward for anyone who finds him. Sade froze. She looked at her mother. Could it be true? The tiny baby she had found in a torn box was not just a child. He was a billionaire's heir. The man pulled out his phone quickly and made a call. Yes, I found him. The baby is safe at the clinic. His voice was filled with excitement. Within an hour, police cars and black jeeps drove up to the clinic. Sirens wailed and people gathered outside to see what was happening. From one of the jeeps stepped a tall man and a woman dressed in fine clothes. Their faces were full of tears and fear. The woman rushed inside. My baby, she cried, running toward the room. The nurse brought the child out, now sleeping peacefully. When the woman saw him, she screamed with joy and hugged him tightly. My son! My son! Everyone in the clinic watched in silence. Sade clutched her mother's hand, her eyes wide. She had never seen such rich people before, and never such deep love. The man turned to Sade and her family. Who found our son? Sade's mother gently pushed her forward. The little girl raised her hand slowly. I did, sir. In the dump. The man's eyes filled with tears. He bent down and hugged her tightly. You saved our child. We will never forget this. Sade felt his warm arms around her. She did not understand what it all meant yet, but deep inside, she knew her life was about to change in a way she had never imagined. That evening, the Adeyemi family insisted that Sade and her family should not go back to their wooden shack. You saved our son, Mr. Adeyemi said firmly. You are coming with us tonight. Sade's mother hesitated. But sir, we are not people of your level. We are poor. We live in the dump. Mr. Adeyemi raised his hand gently. It doesn't matter. You are the reason our child is alive. Please allow us to show you some kindness. Before they could argue further, the Adeyemis led them into one of the jeeps. It was Sade's first time in such a big car. The seats were soft like pillows, and the air smelled fresh and clean. She touched the window button and gasped when the glass moved up and down. Her little brother laughed with joy, pressing the button again and again. As the car drove, Sade looked out of the window. She saw streets she had never walked before. Tall buildings, shining lights, shops with glass doors, and children eating ice cream. Her chest tightened. Was this really the same city where she picked trash each day? After a long drive, they arrived at a giant mansion. The gates opened wide and guards stood saluting as the jeeps entered. Sade's mouth opened in awe. The house was bigger than anything she had ever seen. White walls, tall pillars, shining glass windows, and a garden filled with flowers. This is where you will rest tonight, Mrs. Adeyemi said softly, still holding her baby close. Inside, the house was like a dream. The floor shone like water. A chandelier hung from the ceiling, glittering with lights. Servants rushed forward to welcome them, bowing to the Adeyemis. But when they saw Sade and her family, they looked surprised. Their torn clothes and dusty feet did not fit such a place. Prepare rooms for them, Mr. Adeyemi ordered. The servants bowed again. Yes, sir. Sade and her brother were led into a bedroom. The bed was large, covered with white sheets that smelled like flowers. The bathroom had shiny taps and warm water flowing from the shower. Sade touched the tiles and laughed. Mama, it feels cold but smooth. Her mother smiled weakly, her eyes still full of disbelief. This is not our world, Sade, but for tonight, let us be thankful. That night, Sade lay on the bed, unable to sleep. She thought about the baby. She thought about the dump. She thought about how fast everything had changed. Just that morning, she had been searching for plastic bottles in the trash. Now she was in a mansion. Her heart whispered, could this be the beginning of a new life? While she lay awake, voices filled the mansion. Police officers and journalists came in and out. The story of the missing Adeyemi heir had spread across the whole city. Cameras flashed outside the gate, and reporters shouted questions. Mr. Adeyemi stood in front of them and declared, our son has been found alive, and it was this little girl, Sade, who discovered him and saved him from death. The crowd cheered. Cameras clicked. People shouted her name, but Sade did not hear it. She was still lying on the bed, hugging the soft pillow, her mind lost in wonder. In the master bedroom, Mrs. Adeyemi sat holding her baby. She whispered prayers of thanks, but her husband's eyes were serious. Whoever abandoned him must be found, he said. We will not rest until the kidnappers are caught. Far away in a dark corner of the city, the kidnappers who had dumped the baby in the trash were hiding. They had no idea the child had been found, but soon the news would reach them, and when it did, danger would rise again. For now, Sade and her family slept in comfort for the first time in years, not knowing that their kindness had opened the door to both blessings and trouble. While Sade and her family rested in the Adeyemi mansion, far across the city, three men sat in a dark, hidden room. Their faces were tense, their voices sharp. They were the kidnappers who had taken the Adeyemi baby 2 weeks earlier. One of them, tall and angry, slammed his fist on the table. How did the boy end up in a dump? Who left him there? Another man, nervous and sweating, whispered, it wasn't me. I swear. I thought he was safe in the hideout. Maybe someone betrayed us. The leader spat on the floor. Fools, now the whole city knows the baby has been found. Look! He pointed at a small television in the corner. News reporters were speaking loudly. A picture of the baby and the Adeyemi family filled the screen. The caption read, missing heir found alive, thanks to a little girl. The men looked at each other in fear. The police were searching everywhere. Guards were watching the streets. Their plan had failed. Back in the mansion, life was very different. The Adeyemis treated Sade's family with kindness. They gave them new clothes to wear and warm meals to eat. For the first time in years, Sade tasted chicken stew with rice. She ate slowly, savoring every bite, afraid it would be the last. Her brother licked his plate clean and smiled brightly. Eat more, Mrs. Adeyemi said gently. You are too thin. From now on, you must never go hungry again. Sade's mother lowered her head in gratitude. May God bless you for your kindness, madam. That evening, police officers visited the mansion. They asked Sade many questions. Where exactly did you find the baby? What time? Did you see anyone around? Sade answered truthfully. I only heard crying in a box. When I opened it, I saw him. There was no one else there. The officers nodded, writing down notes. This helps. We will find who abandoned him. But later, as Sade walked through the garden, she felt uneasy. The mansion was big and beautiful, but her heart whispered of danger. She remembered the box, the baby's weak cries. Someone had left him there on purpose. What if they came back? Meanwhile, outside the gates of the mansion, reporters camped day and night. Cameras flashed whenever the family stepped outside. Newspapers called Sade a hero. Some even printed her picture with the headline, Trash-Picking Girl Saves Billionaire Heir. But not everyone was happy with this. The kidnappers, now hiding in fear, saw her face on the screen. The leader's eyes narrowed. So this girl is the one who ruined us. She brought the baby to safety. If the police follow her, they might trace us. We cannot allow that. The other men trembled. What should we do? The leader leaned forward, his voice dark. We must silence her before she speaks more. The girl and her family must not live to tell the story. Back at the mansion, Sade lay in bed. She still could not believe the change in her life. From hunger and trash to soft beds and warm food, it felt like a dream. She whispered to herself, maybe Mama was right. Maybe God has changed our story. But in the shadows of the city, danger was already moving toward her. The kidnappers began to plan their next step. And though Sadi did not know it, the gift of life she gave to the abandoned baby had also placed her family in the middle of a storm. The days passed quickly in the Adeyemi mansion. For the first time in her life, Sade wore new clothes. Her hair was washed and combed neatly by one of the housemaids. Her brother played in the garden with toy cars and balls, things they had only seen in shop windows before. At night, Sade's mother often sat quietly, staring at the ceiling. "God has truly lifted our shame," she whispered. But in her heart, she wondered if such blessings could last. Meanwhile, the Adeyemi family grew closer to them. Mr. Adeyemi often called Sade, "my brave daughter." He would pat her head and smile warmly. Mrs. Adeyemi hugged her often, saying, "You are part of this family now. You saved our son's life." But outside the tall gates of the mansion, danger was drawing nearer. The kidnappers had not forgotten. They had followed the news carefully. Every newspaper carried Sade's picture. Every reporter told the story of the poor girl who saved the rich heir. One night, under the cover of darkness, the kidnappers gathered near the mansion's fence. Their leader pointed to the high walls. "We cannot take the baby back. The police guard him night and day. But the girl, she is the weak point. Without her, the story cannot spread further." The men nodded nervously. They had nothing left to lose. Inside the mansion, Sade could not sleep. She rose from her bed and walked to the balcony. The night was quiet, the stars shining brightly. She looked down at the garden and thought she saw a shadow move. She blinked, thinking her eyes were playing tricks. The next day, police reported seeing strange footprints near the fence. Mr. Adeyemi grew worried. He ordered more guards to be stationed around the house. "These criminals will not harm my family," he said firmly. But the kidnappers were clever. They waited, planning carefully. 3 nights later, when most of the guards had dozed off, the kidnappers made their move. They cut through part of the fence and crawled in silently. Dressed in black, they carried knives and ropes. Their eyes were sharp, and their hearts were full of evil. Sade was sleeping when she heard a soft creak near her window. She opened her eyes slowly and froze. A dark figure was climbing in. She gasped, but the man covered her mouth quickly. "Quiet, or you die," he hissed. Terror filled her chest. She struggled, but his grip was strong. Another man entered the room, tying her hands with a rope. Down the hall, her brother woke to the noise. He screamed loudly, "Mama! Mama!" The whole mansion exploded with chaos. Guards rushed in, shouting. Mr. Adeyemi grabbed a stick and ran upstairs. Police officers stationed outside burst through the doors. The kidnappers panicked. One of them tried to drag Sad toward the window, but she bit his hand hard. He let out a cry of pain. Another guard rushed forward and struck him down. Gunshots rang in the air. The leader of the kidnappers fired wildly, but the police overpowered him. Within minutes, the mansion was filled with noise. Shouts, sirens, crying. Finally, it was over. The kidnappers lay in handcuffs, their faces dark with defeat. Sade sat on the floor, trembling. Tears ran down her cheeks as her mother hugged her tightly. "My child, are you hurt?" Sade shook her head slowly. "I was so scared, Mama. They wanted to take me." Mr. Adeyemi knelt beside her. His eyes burned with anger. "You will never be harmed again, Sadi. You saved my son, and now I will protect you like my own." The police carried the kidnappers away. The leader spat angrily as he was dragged out. "This is not the end," he shouted. But no one listened. That night, the Adeyemi family held Sade close, as if she were truly part of them. Yet in her heart, Sade wondered, what will become of us now? Quick one before I continue. If you love my stories, kindly, to you, Yawan, like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Back to the story. The morning after the attack, the Adeyemi mansion was calm but heavy with thoughts. Guards walked around every corner. Police cars stayed at the gates. The family sat together in the big living room. Sad sat between her mother and brother, still shaken but safe. Mr. Adeyemi stood up, his voice strong. "Last night showed me something. This little girl risked her life again. First, she saved my son. Then she stood against danger. This family does not just owe her thanks, we owe her a future." Mrs. Adeyemi nodded, her eyes wet with tears. "She is a child of destiny. We must lift her and her family out of poverty forever." Sade's mother lowered her head, too humble to speak. She never imagined that a rich man would say such words about her daughter. Later that day, the Adeyemis invited journalists again. Standing before the cameras, Mr. Adeyemi spoke with pride. This young girl, Sade, is the true hero of our nation. From the dirt of the city dump, she brought back life to my son. From today, she and her family will never suffer again. We will sponsor her education, build a home for her family, and make sure they live in dignity. The crowd cheered. Reporters wrote quickly. Sad's picture spread across newspapers once more, but now with a new headline: From Trash to Triumph. Within weeks, builders started work on a new house for Said's family. It was not as grand as the Adeyemi's mansion, but it was beautiful and strong. Painted cream and blue with strong walls and a roof that did not leak, it stood in a safe neighborhood. Said and her brother now had their own beds, their own table, and even bookshelves. I never dreamed of this, Said's mother whispered the day they moved in. She held her children close. Truly, God has changed our story. The Adeyemis also enrolled Sad and her brother in a good school. On the first day, she wore a neat uniform, shiny shoes, and carried a school bag filled with books. She stood in front of a mirror, hardly believing it was her reflection. At school, teachers welcomed her kindly. Some children stared, whispering, "That's the girl who saved the Adeyemi baby." But Said just smiled shyly and sat quietly at her desk. She worked hard, remembering the words her mother always said, "Don't stop hoping." She wanted to make the best of the chance she had been given. One evening, Mr. Adeyemi visited their new home. He looked around with satisfaction. "This is only the beginning," he said. "Saad, you must study well. One day you will stand tall, and people will know your name not just as the girl who saved a baby, but as a woman who became great." Said nodded, her heart swelling with hope. "I will try, sir," she whispered. The Adeyemi baby grew strong and healthy. Each time Said visited the mansion, the little boy stretched his tiny hands toward her, smiling. Mrs. Adeyemi often said, "He remembers you. He knows you saved him." Said would hold the baby gently and smile. She no longer felt like just a girl from the dump. She felt like someone chosen for a purpose. And so from a box of trash came a story of hope. A poor little girl, once forgotten by the world, had saved the life of a child who would one day inherit great wealth. In return, her own life was lifted from the dust to a future filled with promise. At night, as she lay in her soft bed, Said whispered to herself, "Mama was right. God has truly changed our story." Her eyes closed, and for the first time in her young life, her dreams were not filled with hunger or trash, but with light, learning, and endless hope.